Hey friends, what up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Lamed Zayin, Daf 37 of Masechta Yevamos. Friends, what do you want me to tell you? Daf 37 talks about Yibum. But, friends, what do you say? I think... it's like we're back in Masechta Tainus. So as I was saying, what do you say? The last few days have been like more manageable, right? What do you want me to tell you? I mean, it's not like, Moed, I'm not talking about like Sukkot or anything, but like, we're talking about like stuff. I don't know, it's Gemara. What do you want me to tell you? But like, it's not like freaking, am I right? Is that what it is? Am I right? I think so. Am I right? I think that's what they say. Alright, so today we talk about Yibum and stuff, like situations where you have, Reuven, Shimon, Sarah, but Sarah is like pregnant and she has a baby and like we're not sure, like does it count, in which case Reuven has progeny and therefore Yibum isn't shaykh, or does it not count, in which case Reuven doesn't have progeny and Yibum is shaykh. Friends, we got a little bit of work to do on Daf Lamed Vav Amud Beis, but we're just gonna hit it. So yesterday at the end of the daf, we discussed this situation where so you have Reuven and Shimon, and they are not related in this example. So you have Reuven and Shimon, so you have Reuven and Shimon, and Reuven is married to Sarah. Reuven dies. So we say that Shimon cannot marry Sarah if she is pregnant or if she is nursing for 24 months. Now, what if he did anyway? So we saw it's machlokas between Reb Meir and the Chachamim. Reb Meir says that they have to get divorced and they can never get back together ever. The Chachamim say no, they have to get divorced, but they can get remarried after 24 months. Now, let's go back to Omer Rav Ashi Rav Hoshaya Braid Rav Idi. So it says Rav Ashi to Rav Hoshaya Braid Rav Idi. What does he say? Hasam Tani, we learn in the Brisa. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, says Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Kol sheshah ba'adam lamed yom eino neifel. Any fellow who is born, so you have a little fellow, he's born, Mazel tov, welcome to the world, little fellow. Okay, so you have this little fellow, he's 30 days old, eino neifel, so he's no longer, like, at that point, he's considered, it's no longer a suffix if is he going to live or not. 30 days, he's in with the living people. He's no longer a nefel, which is like a suffix child that maybe he'll die. Halosha sveika avit. However, within the first 30 days, right, until this child has reached 30 days, he's a suffix. We're not sure if he's going to survive. V'itmar, and it was stated, Meiz b'soch lamed yom, v'omdov niskadsha. So friends, what happens in the case of Yibum? The context of Yibum, so you have Reuven and Shimon and they're brothers, right? So you have Reuven's married to Sarah, and Reuven dies. Of course, Hillel Lester, Reuven always dies. So Reuven dies, as he always does. And Sarah gives birth to a child, right? To their child, Reuven and Sarah's child. But the child dies within 30 days. And she thinks, well, I gave birth to a child. Therefore, Reuven and myself, we had a child together. Reuven is progeny. So I'm going to go and marry somebody else. And that's what she does. But we had said that a child who dies within 30 days is only considered a suffix, and therefore it's really unclear, right? We don't necessarily view it as though as though Reuven had a child. So b'soch lamed yom, if this child died within 30 days, and then she went and got married. Ravina mishmei de Rava Omar. So it says Ravina in the name of Rava. Look, if she is if the person who she married is a Yisrael, and a Yisrael of course is allowed to marry a chalutza. So look, choletzes, right? So Imeshes Yisrael, he choletzes. Imeshes Yisrael, he choletzes, right? If she's married to a Yisrael, so just let her do chalitza. And then, right, so do chalitza with Shimon. Right, she'll do chalitza with Shimon, right? Just in case they have to do Yibum. So she'll do chalitza with Shimon. She can remain married to this other husband because the other husband's allowed to marry a chalutza. V'meishes koini, but if she's married, if this fellow who married her is a kohen, and a kohen is not allowed to be married to a chalutza, well then just forget it. Eina choletzes, just leave it alone, ignore it, it's fine. And they could remain married. Rav Misharsh Mishmei Rav Omar says, Rav Misharsh in the name Rav, Achazo choletzes. No, it's a low plug. It doesn't matter if the fellow who she got married to is a Kohen or a Yisrael. It makes no difference. She has to do chalitza. What do you want me to tell you, right? This child died within 30 days, and you can't assume that Ruvain has progeny, and therefore she has to do chalitza with Shimon. And even if that means that she can no longer remain married to her husband who's a Kohen, what do you want me to tell you? There's no exception. Amle Ravina Rav Misharshus. Now says Ravina to Rav Misharshus, he says, wait a second. Be'orta Amar Rava Ach Yuvatzafra Hadarbe. Right? Because Ravina had said the name of Rav that if she married a Kohen in the interim, so then she doesn't need to do chalitza. Rav Misharshus says in the name of Rav that it's a low plug, and that whether she's married now to a Yisrael or a Kohen, she has to do chalitza, even if that means that she cannot remain married to the Kohen. So now, Amar Ravina Rav Misharsha, Ba'orta Amar Rav Hach, he says, Ravina to Rav Misharsha, look, at night, Rav Ataka said, like you're saying, that it's a low plug, and he has to do chalitza even if she's married to a Kohen. However, he's saying a different tune in the morning. In the morning, however, he said that, what did he say in the morning? He said in the morning that if she's married to a Kohen, so then she would not need to do chalitza, so that they could remain married. Omarle, to which Rav Misharshi responds, Sharisu, you're permitting Sarah to remain married to her husband without chalitza if he happens to be a Kohen. What, do you want that we should even permit eating chalev, which of course you're not allowed to eat chalev? Rav Misharshi is saying, what the heck? Right? This is crazy. This is preposterous that Sarah could remain married to her Kohen husband without chalitza. Hacha gabe meuberes chavero uminekes chavero hanesua lekoyen mai mi'avud rabbanon takanto lekoyen olo. So Misharsha then challenges Ravina, and he says in that initial case that I mentioned in the right before we got started, when you have Ruvain and Shimon who are not related, and Ruvain dies, and his wife Sarah is pregnant or nursing. Shimon cannot marry her until 24 months after she gives birth, until she's no longer nursing. And if they do get married, so Rav Meir had said that they need to get divorced and they can get remarried after 24 months. And the Chacham say, Rav Meir said that they have to get divorced and they cannot ever get remarried. The Chacham said that they can get remarried after 24 months, but everyone seems to say that you have to get divorced immediately, and there's no nafka mina, right? Even the Chacham who say that they're allowed to get remarried after 24 months, they don't say, but if she's married to a Kohen, then they don't need to get divorced, because then they won't be able to get remarried, because a Kohen can't marry a divorcee. We don't seem to be making any exceptions, whether it's a Kohen or not, and therefore says Rav Misharsha, I don't understand why in this case you think that Rava would say, or why would Rava be saying allegedly, that in this case, where Sarah needed to do Yibum, right? Ruvain and Shimon are brothers in this case, and Ruvain dies. Sarah gives birth to a child, and the child dies within 30 days, and she gets married to a Kohen. So why do you think that she would not have to do chalitza? I mean, just in order to preserve her marriage doesn't seem to be enough in the case of when Ruvain and Shimon are not brothers but they're friends, and then Shimon marries Sarah when she's pregnant or nursing. In that case, there seems to be no difference between if she married, if Shimon's a Kohen or not. So why all of a sudden here do we seem to be caring if the person who she married is a Kohen? Right? So it says the Gemara, third line of the Gemara, Hachonami. Where am I? Right, Hachonami. Would we say also Gabi Meuberes Chaver Menekes Chaver Anesu LeKohen? My, right? I'm sorry, not Hachonami. Hacha Gabe, when it comes to Meuberes Chavero, when Reuven and Shimon are friends, and Reuven dies, and Sarah is pregnant, or Sarah is nursing, and Shimon is a kohen, and he marries her even though he's not allowed to. What do we say in that case? Do the rabbis make a takana l'kohen? Although, or not? Do they say that if Shimon's a kohen, so then they don't need to get divorced, because if they get divorced, then they won't be able to get remarried? To which Amarle Ravina responds to Misharshe. He says, when it comes to the case of Sarah, when Reuven and Shimon are brothers, and Sarah needs to do Yibum, and she has a baby, and the baby dies within 30 days, and then she gets married to a kohen. Well, in that case, with regard to the Nefel, with regard to this child who dies within 30 days, there is the rabbis who argue Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, right? It was Reb Shimon ben Gamliel's opinion that we said at the very beginning of today's daf, that I'm going to read it from the bottom of Lamed Vav Beis, Kol Shesha ba'adam Lamed Yom Enu Nefel. That it's Reb Shimon ben Gamliel's opinion that once 30 days have passed and the child is alive, so then the child is no longer a Nefel, but before then he's a suffix. However, I'm back in our Gemara, right, and Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph, 5 lines in, 6 lines in, but since there is opinion of the rabbis who argue on Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, the Amri, and that they say, that even if the child does not live for 30 days, the child is still considered a child, and therefore Sarah would not have to do Yibum anymore. She gave birth to a child. So Gabi Eishes Kohen came to Lo Efshar of Din Karabonon. So since there is the opinion of the rabbis that even if the child does not live for 30 days, it's still considered a child, and therefore if we rely on the rabbis, then Sarah would not have to do chalitza. So we could rely on the rabbis and say that fine, Sarah does not need to do chalitza, because if she does chalitza, then she cannot remain married to her husband who's a kohen. Aval hacha, when it comes to Reuven and Shimon who are friends, and Reuven dies and Sarah is pregnant or nursing, kiman naivid. How could we make an exception and say that, well, if Shimon is a kohen, so then they don't need to get divorced? Yikr Meir, ha'amr yotzi v'lo yachzor elamis. Rav Meir's opinion is that they can never get remarried. The rabbis, and if it's the rabbis' opinion, well, they say that at least you still need to give a get. After 24 months you can get remarried, but you still have to do that initial divorce, and therefore there is no opinion to rely upon to say that they could remain married. However, when it comes to this child who dies within 30 days, you can rely upon the opinion of the rabbis who say that it's still considered a child, and therefore she would not have to do chalitza, and therefore, if she ended up getting married to a Yisrael, so we say fine, do chalitza just in case, but to be chayshish for Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. However, if she married a kohen, so let's rely upon the rabbis and say that the child was a child, and therefore she does not need to do yibum or chalitza, and she could remain married to her husband the kohen without chalitza itmar. It was stated, Kidsha b'soch shlosha uvarach. Okay. You have Sarah. Sarah was married and she got divorced, or her husband, or she became a widow. And then, so we had said that you have to wait 3 months before you can get remarried, just so that, if she becomes pregnant, we'll know who the father is. So b'soch shlosha uvarach pligi ba. So what happens if nonetheless she gets married, right? So I don't know, so she was married to Reuven and it didn't work out. They got divorced, or Reuven died, whatever it was. And Shimon now marries Sarah within 3 months. And then Shimon bounces. Pligi ba Rav Acha v'Rafam. So Rav Acha and Rafam argue. Chadam shamtinun le. One of their opinions is, well, we put him in excommunication. Shimon the Nudnik is excommunicated. And some say the fact that he bounced basically shows that he wasn't serious about this marriage anyways, and we can just basically annul the marriage retroactively. And there was a story, and Rafram Taka said, look, the fact that he ran away means that clearly he wasn't serious about this marriage to begin with, and you don't even need a get. Alright, fine. Sofik ben Teisha v'chule. So we had said in the Mishnah that if Shimon and Sarah do Yibum, and Sarah gives birth to a baby after 9 months, and we're not sure if it's 9 months from Ruvain or 7 months from Shimon, so they cannot, right? So we don't know, right? If it's Ruvain's baby, so then they cannot stay together because it's Eish Shesach. If it's Shimon's baby, well then it means that Ruvain and Sarah did not have any children, in which case Shimon and Sarah stay together. So it's a suffix, right? We don't know if it's 9 months from Ruvain or 7 months from Shimon, and therefore we say that Shimon and Sarah cannot remain together. Now the child Memele is a kosher child, because, if he's Reuven's child, then it's from Reuven and Sarah, and if it's Shimon's child, so that means that Reuven didn't have any children, which means that Memele, Shimon and Sarah did Yibum, and that's fine. So either way, the child is fine, but they bring in Ashram Talui because they don't know, right? Just in case the child is Reuven's child, and then he accidentally slept with his sister-in-law, which is Eish Shesach, so just in case, they bring in Ashram Tali, a sort of guilt offering, a conditional guilt offering. Okay, fine. Amalei Ravali Rav Nachman. Friends, you ready for this? So Rav Ataka says to Rav Nachman, Lema Halech Achar Rov Noshim Matisha Yaladon. Friends, you hear the kasha? Rav asked Rav Nachman, well, look, most women give birth after 9 months, so why not just assume that that's what's going on over here? After 9 months, or right, I guess 7 months after Shimon marries, does even with Sarah, she has a baby, and now we're not sure, is it 7 months is it Shimon's baby being born after 7 months, or Reuven's baby being born after 9 months? So ask Rav to Rav Nachman, he says, well, most women give birth after 9 months, so can't we just assume that it's Reuven's child? So Amalei, so Rav Nachman says, well, Noshe Didon l'shiva yaladon. Our women give birth after 7 months. I mean, I guess Rav Nachman was in Narda, and as he said, I guess maybe saying like the women of Narda actually give birth after 7 months. So why are you saying that everybody gives birth after 9 months? Amarle, to which Rav responds, Nishe didchu havruba de alme. So Rav says to Rav Nachman, he says, good for Narda, good for you people. I mean, are your women representative of the entire world? I'm saying that in general, women give birth after 9 months. Amarle, hachi ko'amino. So says Rav Nachman, this is what I'm saying. Rav Noshim yoladon l'tisha, that most women give birth after 9 months. Umiut l'shiva, but some women do give birth after 7 months. V'chol yoledes l'tisha uber nikar l'shlish yomel. Now, any woman who gives birth after 9 months, so after 3 months, you'll be able to recognize that she's pregnant. Vizo, and in this case, right, clearly it wasn't, right? If you were able to tell that she was pregnant after 3 months, so immediately you can know that it's Reuven's child. But this woman, right, in this case, Sarah, ho v'lo hukar ubra l'shlish yomel Israelei ruba. So, but in this case, since with Sarah it was not recognizable that she was pregnant after 3 months, so therefore we can no longer rely upon the majority anymore, and therefore we cannot assume that she's giving birth after 9 months. But then, fact the Gemara, but 1 second, if we're saying that any woman who gives birth after 9 months, then after 3 months you'll be able to recognize that she's pregnant, well then Sarah, since it was not recognizable after 3 months that she was pregnant, ubravadai bar shiva letisha. Wait, what? What did I just say? Wait, where am I? Well, if that's the case, that we're saying that any woman who gives birth after 9 months, so then it will, the pregnancy will be recognizable after 3 months. Well, if that wasn't the case here with Sarah, so then doesn't that mean that Memele, it must be a 7-month pregnancy, which means that it was 7 months from Shimon? So, Ella Ema, rather I'll say, Rova Yoledes Letisha Ubra Nikolish Shomer. Look, it means that, most women who give birth after 9 months, so then you would be able to tell after 3 months. But that's not in every case, but the majority of the cases. Right? Most women who give birth after 9 months, you can tell that they're pregnant after 3 months. But in this case of Sarah, ruba. But since in this case, it wasn't recognizable after 3 months, so it's not that it was definitely a 7-month pregnancy, but we can't necessarily assume that it was a 9-month pregnancy, and we're not sure if it is 9 months from Reuven or 7 months from Shimon. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. The rabbis taught, Rishon Roi Leos Kohen Gadol V'Sheni Mamzer Misofik Rebelez Ben Yaakov Omer in Mamzer Misofik. Friends, what did we just read? Rishon, who's the Rishon? This child, right? This child who we're not sure if the child came from Reuven or from Shimon. He could be the Kohen Gadol because Mimonavshach, right? Meaning, if he's Reuven's child, okay, so he's a child that from Reuven and from Sarah, Givaldik. If he's Shimon's child, so Memele, Reuven didn't have any children, and so Shimon did Yibum with Sarah, and they had children, Givaldik. So Kilu, the first child could be a Kohen Gadol. But the thing is, what if they remain together? Right? We had said in the Mishnah that in this case where we're unsure who the father is, so if Shimon and Sarah, right, so the Mishnah had said that Shimon and Sarah cannot stay together, and they have to bring an Ashram Talui. But what if they did stay together? And they have a child? Well, this child is kind of in a tricky situation, because if the child is from Reuven, right, the second child, right, so if Reuven, right, when it comes to the second child, that certainly came from Shimon and from Sarah, but the child is a Suffolk child, because if the first child was Reuven's child and Reuven had children, then that would mean that Shimon and Sarah cannot be together because of Eishesach, and therefore this child, right, it's an erva, and this child would be a mamzer. However, if the first child was from Shimon and Sarah, which means that Reuven didn't have any children, which means that Shimon and Sarah are allowed to be together, so then the child is a regular Jew. So this child is the second child. Memele is a suffix. So the first child can even be the Kohen Gadol, right? The first child is fine, but the second child becomes a suffix mamzer. So now Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Rishon. So the first child, right? The child who we're not sure if the child is from Reuven or from Shimon. Roi Leos Kohen Gadol, it could be a Kohen Gadol. Givaldik. V'Sheni mamzer misafik. But the second child, however, is a suffix mamzer, because if the first child was from Reuven, well then the second child is a mamzer. If the first child was Shimon, well then the second child is a regular Jew. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer in mamzer misafik, says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov that there's no mamzer from a suffix. There's no suffix mamzer. So my comment, what is it? How do we understand this? Omer Bai Achi Kamer. Bai says this is how you understand it. Rishon Roi Leos Kohen Gadol. Okay, the first child can be the Kohen Gadol, Gevaldik. V'Sheni Suffolk Mamzer, V'Asub Mamzeres, and says the Tanakama. Then the second child that's born is a Suffolk Mamzer. We don't know if he's a Mamzer or not. We don't know if Reuven had children or not. And depending on that, it would make him a Mamzer or not. So Tanakama says, look, Lemaise, we don't know if he's a Mamzer, V'Asub Mamzeres, and therefore he's not allowed to marry a Mamzeres, right? A Mamzer is allowed to marry a Mamzeres. Now, but we don't know if this child is a Mamzer, so he's not allowed to marry a Mamzeres. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Eino Safek Mamzer Elavade Mamzer Umutter Mamzeres. Says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, no, we treat this child as a Vadai Mamzer, and he's allowed to marry a Mamzeres. Ravi Amar Achika Amar. Ravi explains the Braisa in the following way: Rishon Roi Leos Kohen Gadol, that the first child can even be the high priest. V'Sheni Mamzer Vadai Mi Safek. Says the Tanakama, punkt fakert, according to Rav. It's the opposite. It says the Tanakama that the second child, mamzer vadai misafik, because we're uncertain if he's a mamzer or not, we treat it as if he's certainly a mamzer, and he's allowed to marry a mamzeres. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov ein vadai mamzer misafik. We don't say that the suffix that we treat it as a vadai mamzer. Elasofik mamzer, v'asib mamzeres, and he's also to marry mamzeres. So we see a machlokas between Abaye and Rava. They basically have opposite opinions, right? According to Abaye, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is saying that it's a suffix mamzer, that it's a vadei mamzer, And according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is saying it's taka a suffix mamzer. And what the Tanakama and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and what Abaye and Rav are arguing about is about the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. The Tanan, as we learn it in a Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, says Rabbi Eliezer, Vadon bivadon mutter, that, when you have a vadai, a definite mamzer and a definite mamzer, they can get married together, but vadon bisveikan bivadon also. But if, one of them is a suffix, or even both of them are suffix, then they cannot get married together, because we have to be concerned that, if one is a mamzer and the other one isn't, so then they would not be allowed to marry each other. Because, you're not allowed to marry a mamzer, unless you're a mamzer. A mamzeris, I guess. Besveikon also, ve'eluin sveikon, and these are the suffix. Right? These are the ones that we're not sure about. Shtuki, vasufi, v'kusi. A shtuki is a little kid that whenever he mentions his father, his mom is gets all uncomfortable, because it's not particularly clear that that's actually his father. And we don't know who the father is, and the father maybe is a mamzer. Or an asufi, if you just pick up a little kid from the market, you find a little kid, and you pick him up and bring him home, and you don't know who the father is. Maybe the father is a mamzer or a kusi, right? Also, the kusis were these people who converted to Judaism just to be saved from lions in the wilderness, and they didn't necessarily follow all the halachis, and they didn't necessarily agree to the same standards or the same halachas that we have about marriage, and they might be mamzers. V'amar Yudam, Rav says, that the halacha is like Rab Elazar, that a suffix, right, that the only way, right, a vadai mamzer and a vadai mamzeres can get married to each other, but no suffix. Fine. It says Rav that the halacha is like Rab Elazar. Fine. And it says of Yehuda that when I said this shtickle Torah in front of Shmuel, Amarli, he said to me, 1 second. Hillel shana asar yuchsan olami bavel. 1 second. Hillel taught that there were 10 sort of statuses of lineage that made Aliyah Eretz Yisrael from Bavel. Kohane, Leviye, V'Yisraele. So Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim. Chalole, Cholos. I had a friend who thought he was a Chol. Geire, converts. Charure, freed Canaanite slaves. Mamzere, Nesine, Shtuki, Vasufi. So mamzers and nosins. Nosins were the people from the Givonim, with Yoshua that he made into the water schleppers. Shtuki, Vasufi, right? The child, whenever he mentions his dad, his mom gets uncomfortable. Vasufi, and somebody a child you chapped from the you just chapped and raised. So all these cases are suffix. And they're permitted to, well, not all of them are suffix, but definitely some of them are suffix, but they're all allowed to marry one another. So we see that Hillel is saying that a suffix is allowed to marry a mamzer, but and you're saying that the halacha is like Rabbi Elazar, who says that a suffix is not allowed. So now Abaye is Sover Shmuel. So Abaye, who says that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion is that we treat the suffix like a vadai, and this child would be allowed to marry a mamzeres. We treat him like a vadai mamzer. So that was right. So according to Abaye, that's Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion, that this child is treated as the suffix mamzer child is treated as a vadai mamzer and can marry a mamzeres. So that is like Shmuel, who raises the fact that Hillel says that these suffix are allowed to marry each other. And Abaye explains Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov to be in accordance with Hillel, and that's the halacha, right? As Rashi points out in Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, we had learned in, I believe, Masechta Pesachim, although he quotes it from Masechta Gittin, that Mishnah Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Kavanaki, that whenever you have the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, he paskin like that. So therefore, Abaye is saying like Shmuel, who points out that according to Hillel, these suffix are allowed to marry each other. So therefore, Abaye wants to establish Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who we're going to paskin like, to be like Hillel. Whereas So that there shouldn't be no question about the halacha of Hillel and the halacha of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rav Savar Rav, whereas Rav holds like Rav, the Amar halacha Elazar, who says that the halacha is taka like Rabbi Elazar. Umukila Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov aliba de Ilchasa keichid la tikshe Ilchasa. And Rav taka has the opposite, which is that he holds like Rav, who says that the halacha is like Rabbi Elazar, who says that the suffix are not allowed to marry each other, and therefore Rava says that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says that this child who's a suffix mamzer is not allowed to marry a mamzeres, because Rava wants, right, he holds like Rav, who says that the halacha is like Rabbi Elazar, that the suffix is not allowed to marry a mamzeres, and therefore he wants to establish Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov like that, to say that a suffix is not allowed to marry a mamzeres, and because we want to paskin like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Omer Abai, says Abai, mina lo, the chosveka Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov kivade mashvile. So Abai says, how do I know that according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, whenever you have a suffix, it's treated like a vadai, and that this child who is a suffix mamzer would be allowed to marry a mamzeres? How do we know this? So the Tanya, as we talk a little in the Brayso, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Arisha Baal Noshim Harbe. You have a fellow who slept with many women. Ve'ein Yodea al Ezo Me'en Ba. To the extent that he can't even remember anymore which women he slept with, which means that Memele, he doesn't even know who his children. He may have children with lots of different people. He's lost track of everything. Or if the opposite, right? If you have the opposite situation, you have a woman who slept with so many men, she has no clue who she became pregnant from. So you're going to end up having a situation where there's all these kids running around, these people running around, who nobody knows who their parents are, and then they end up marrying each other. You can have a father marrying a daughter. I mean, who the heck knows? Right? Let's say this guy who's been sleeping around with tons of women and has tons of kids, and then he marries a younger person, a younger woman. That younger woman might be his daughter. He has no clue. So you can have brothers marrying each other, because nobody knows whose parents are who. And the whole world can be filled up with mamzerin, and it says about this, and the land will be filled up with promiscuity. So we see that according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, he's pretty certain that that this suffix mamzers, if we don't know what's what, we have to, we treat it as if it's a vadai, and that the whole land is going to be filled up with promiscuity. Whereas Rava says, no, not necessarily. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov could say that it's actually a suffix. What's zima? Zima is zomahi. What is this? I.e., lashon suffix. Okay, so Abai wants to say that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion is that the suffix mamzers are treated like vadai, whereas Rava says that no, they're treated like suffix. Yasir al Kenam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. More than this, says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Lo yisa adam isha b'medina zo v'elech visa isha b'medina acheres, that a fellow should not marry one woman in this location and then have another wife in another location, because even though he knows who his wives are, but what happens if the children don't know each other, and they don't know, right? The guy's got one wife in one place, another wife in another place. Nobody, right? Nobody knows about the other, right? And the kids don't know about their siblings. And you might have a situation where brothers are marrying sisters because they Pasha don't know. Ini, is this really the case? But one second, Rav, when he visited the place called Dardoshir, Machriz v'Omer, and he made an announcement. Man havyu liyoma, who wants to be my wife for my stay? He visited Dardoshir for a week. He says, who wants to be my wife for the week? Rav Nachman kikol l'shchansiv. When Rav Nachman visited Shchansiv, Machriz v'Omer, he said, Man havyu liyoma, right? Who wants to be my wife while I'm here? So apparently, they would have different wives when they went to different places. Shani Rabbanan Difkiya Shmayu. well, rabbis are different because, their name is significant, and therefore, if they have a child, that child would go after their name, right? It would be like, right, the child of Rav Nachman, the child of Rav, right? Their name would precede them, so everybody would know, like, oh, you're the child of Rav, I'm the child of Rav, and you would kind of avoid the situation. Didn't Rava say, wait 1 second, how could they just like roll into town and be like, who wants to be my wife while I'm here? Didn't Rava say that if they tell a girl that she's going to get married and she gets excited about it, that if she then sees dam because of it, so then right, she got excited and somehow that caused her to menstruate, so then she has to wait 7 days. So if that is the case, how could they just roll into town and say, who wants to be my wife? Don't you have to be concerned about nida? So Rabbanan Shulchayu Av Mishadru Umodoilu. Well, no, they wouldn't just roll into town and say, who wants to be my wife? They would send their people ahead and be like, yo, Rav is coming, Rav Nachman's coming, who wants to be his wife while he's here? So there was plenty of time to be a nida and then not be a nida, all before Rav or Rav Nachman showed up. Or if you want, I will say, or you could say, look, Rav and Rav Nachman didn't just roll into town and like find women. That's not what they were doing. They weren't necessarily right having a sexual relationship with them. Rather, no, it's just different when you kind of know that you have it available to you. Meaning, they were coming to town and they didn't want to be without. They didn't want to be unmarried. Because maybe that can lead to something inappropriate. So they wanted to make sure that they had a wife while they were there. Now, they weren't actually going to be sleeping with this person. It's just when you know that like you have something, so then you don't actually need it, right? So it's not similar to somebody who has bread in their basket to somebody who doesn't have bread in their basket, right? So Kilu, somebody has a basket, or somebody has food, so you don't need to eat this second, right? Okay, you'll eat later, right? It's not an emergency. If somebody who doesn't have any food, so all they can think about is like, wait, I need food. And therefore, Rav and Rav Nachman weren't necessarily looking to like have a wife because they can't go like, 1 day without sleeping with a woman. No, that wasn't it. It was just that, there was more that they were concerned about, being left on their own devices, and therefore they just wanted to know that they have a wife, but not necessarily more than that. Tana Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, lo yisa adam ishto v'daitu legarsha. All right, says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, a fellow should not marry a woman intending to divorce her. Interesting. Mishum Shneimar, as the pasuk says, what does the pasuk say? Al tachosh ariyecha ra. Don't sort of like silently be thinking something negative about your friend. And he's just kind of like thinking everything's cool while you have ulterior motives. So don't marry a woman with the intention of divorcing her. Okay, sounds good to me. All right, friends, you ready for this? Says the Gemara, Sofik v'Yevamos shebo lachlok b'nichsei misno. You hear that? So you have Ruvain and Sarah and Shimon and this child. So you have this child who's born, and it's unclear if the child is Ruvain's child or Shimon's child. Now it comes to inheritance, and everybody wants to claim that it belongs to them. Shimon says, right? So what are they saying? So Safik v'Yevamos shebo lachlok b'nichsei misna. So now this child and Shimon want to divide up Ruvain's estate. Safik Omer, so the child says, Ono bar misnu v'nichsei didiu. Look, I am Ruvain's child, and therefore you don't inherit my father. I inherit my father, and I get everything. V'Yevamos Omer, where Shimon says, Ad baroi didiat. You are my son, v'leis lach v'lo midi b'nichsei, and you get nothing of my brother Ruvain's estate. You, young man, are my son. Now run along and go do something. Play outside or something. So says the Gemara, in that case, I mean, it's he said, she said, right? Or in this case, he said, right? I mean, we don't know. It's a suffix. What do you want me to tell you? So the kid argues that he's Reuven's son, so that he can inherit Reuven. Shimon says, no, you're my son, which means that Reuven didn't have any sons, so he can inherit Reuven. So what do you want me to tell you? How are we supposed to figure this out? So they split it 50-50. Sofek uvnei Yavam shebo lachlok b'nichsei misno. So now you have a situation where this child and other children of Shimon want to divide up the estate of Reuven, right? So I guess maybe Shimon died. So let's say Reuven had $1 million in his estate, and he, of course, died. And it goes to, I don't know, I guess Shimon or whatever, and then Shimon dies or whatever. Somehow, basically, Shimon's got a bunch of kids, plus this kid who we don't know, is it Reuven's kid or Shimon's kid? And now they want to divide up Reuven's estate. Okay, here we go. So, again, Safik uvnei Yavam, so you have this child, uvnei Yavam and the other children of Shimon, shebo lachlok b'nichsei misna, and they want to divide up the estate of Reuven. Safik Omer, hau gaver bar misno. So the Safik, this child, says, look, I'm Reuven's child. V'nichsei didihu, and it's all mine. I get all of Reuven's estate, b'nei Yavam amre. Whereas Shimon's kids say, atachenu at. What are you talking about, buddy old pal? You're our brother, you're one of us. And therefore, as one of us, you inherit equally with all of us. You do not get everything, you get one portion. So the rabbis who were by Rav Misharsha, they thought to say, Masisini, that it's like the Mishnah, Ditnan, that it says in the Mishnah, Hu enu yorish osam ve'im yorishim oso, v'ocha ipcha. That basically this is the opposite of the Mishnah that says he does not inherit them, but they inherit him. And that's talking about a situation where you have Reuven and you have Shimon, and this is not talking about where Reuven died or anything like that. So Hillel, write this down as maybe an exception to the rule. Reuven does not die. But anyways, Reuven's got a bunch of kids. Shimon's got a bunch of kids. Well, I guess he does die eventually, which is kind of the point, I guess. So I guess he does die. So no need to write anything down. Reuven's got a bunch of kids. Shimon's got a bunch of kids, and then there's this guy. There's this kid. We don't know if he's Reuven's kid or Shimon's kid. So now, of course, when it comes to inherit Reuven's kids say, what are you talking about? You're Shimon's kid. And then when Shimon comes, when Shimon's kids come to inherit Shimon, they say, what are you talking about? You're Reuven's kid. So he kind of, plays monkey in the middle. But when this little fellow dies, so then both Reuven's kids and Shimon's kids get to chop his assets and divide it amongst themselves. So they wanted to say that it's like the Mishnah, Hu enu yorish osam, that this kid does not inherit them. Ve'im yorishim also, but they inherit him. V'acha ipcha, but here would just be the opposite. Whereas over here, he's the one who has the stronger claim, right? He says that I'm Reuven's kid, right? So we want to say that he would be able to inherit them and inherit the property and say to them, bring a proof that I'm really Shimon's kid and not Reuven's kid. But the Gemara says no. Hasam amrile. I'm sorry. So Hasam amrile aisiraya ushkol. So in that other case, right, when you have Reuven's kids and Shimon's kids, and then this kid who's a suffix, so they say to him in that case, they say, look, bring, when Shimon dies and he wants to inherit with Shimon's kids, they say, look, fellow, bring a proof that you're Shimon's kid, and then sure, we'll include you, right? Same thing with Reuven's kids, right? Reuven's kids say to him, bring us proof that you're Reuven's kid, and then we'll include you. And over here in this case, when Reuven dies and there's Yibum, but we don't know if the child is from Reuven or from Shimon, and now they come to divide up Reuven's estate, and Shimon's kids want to say that he's one of them, and Reuven says no, and this other kid says no, I'm Reuven's kid, so I get everything. So Amalu, he'll say to them, Aisu Raya Ushkolu, bring a proof that I'm really your brother and that I'm not Reuven's kid, and then fine, and then I'll divide up with you. Amru of Mishasha says to them, Midam, you can't compare these two cases because Hasam inu vada v'yu safik. No, in the case of Reuven's kids and Shimon's kids, and then this kid trying to inherit with them, look, Reuven's kids know that they're Reuven's kids. Shimon's kids know that they're Shimon's kids. And it's just this one kid who doesn't know, is he Reuven's son or Shimon's son? So the kids who know who they are, right, Reuven's kids say, look, we know that we're Reuven's kids. We don't know that you're Reuven's kid. So bring us a proof, right? So sort of the burden of proof is on the kid, is on this kid who we're not sure about. Hacha, whereas in this case, idi v'idi safek. Both situations, right, nobody really knows, right? Meaning we're talking about Shimon's kids, not claiming that they're Shimon's kids, but claiming about Reuven, right, about this other kid, right? Meaning Reuven, we don't, right, I'm sorry, this kid, we don't know is he Reuven's kid or he's Shimon's kid, right? Also, these, right, Shimon's kids, they also don't know, because if this other kid is Reuven's kid, well then they get nothing. But if this other kid is Shimon's kid, well then they all divide up equally. So in this case, nobody really knows, so it's kind of harder to say who should bring the proof. Rather, if it's similar to anything, it's similar to the following. The Safek uvne yavam, that for this kid who we're not sure if it's Reuven's kid or Shimon's kid, uvne yavam, or all of Shimon's kids, shabo lachlok benichse yavam gufe, that they actually want to divide up Shimon's actual estate. So in this case, the Hasam Amre Le Aisi Raya Da'achunaat Ushko, that when it comes to dividing up the estate of Shimon, so then Shimon's other kids know that they're the child of Shimon, but this other kid doesn't know that he's the child of Shimon, and therefore Shimon's children say to him, like, hey, bring us a proof that you are actually a child of Shimon, and then you can inherit with us. And that is similar to that Mishnah that we had just mentioned a few minutes ago about Reuven's kids and Shimon's kids. And when it comes to inherit Reuven, the kids say to this other kid, like, prove that you're Reuven's son. When it comes to inherit Shimon, they say, prove that you're Shimon's son. So that Mishnah would be similar to our case when this child, right, when it comes to actually inheriting Shimon, and Shimon's children say, look, buddy, prove to us that you are a Shimon's son, and then you can inherit with us. So now says the Gemara, Safek uvnei Yavam, okay? Shabo lachot benichsei Yavam, the vasu the palag Yavam benichsei misna. Friends, you hear that? If you remember a little bit earlier, we had said that if Shimon and this child come to divide up Reuven's estate, so the child says, look, I'm the child of Reuven, I get all of it. Shimon says, no, you're not, you're my child. Child, son, listen up, buddy, you're my son, and therefore I'm getting Reuven's estate. So it's he said. So they just divided up 50-50. So that's what happened. So Shimon and this child divided up 50-50. Now, Shimon dies. And there's drama between this kid and all the sons of Shimon and how to divide up Shimon's estate. So let's read that again. So Safek uvnei Yavam. So this child, uvnei Yavam, and all the children of Shimon, shebo lachlok benichsei Yavam, and they want to now divide up Shimon's estate. Levasu de palag Yavam benichsei misna. Now, this child had already divided up, had already split in half his father's estate. Let's say it was $1 million. So he had already split it up with Shimon. That this kid got $500,000 and Shimon got $500,000. And now they want to come to divide up Shimon's estate. So now Bnei Yavam Amre, so Shimon's kids say, I see Raya da'achuna atushko. Bring a proof that you're in fact our brother, and you're not a child of Reuven, and sure, if you could prove that, so then chaparain with us. Amalu, to which this fellow says, Amalu Safek, so this Safek child says, Manov shaychu, look, either way you look at it, man, I achuchon ono, havuli manoso badaychu, look, if I'm your brother, so then let me chaparain with you. Ve'ibar misna ono, but if I'm Ruvain's child, well then if you're assuming that I'm Ruvain's child and therefore I can't chaparain with you, well then you're basically admitting that your father Shimon had no right taking $500,000 from my father Ruvain's estate, so give me that back. Habuli palgo de palagavuchon ba'adoy. So give me back the half $500,000 that your father Shimon took under the assumption that I'm one of you. Rabbi Abba Omar kom dina, Rabbi Yirmiyah Omar hadu dina. So Rabbi Abba says, look, once it has been established, it's been established. Meaning, once the decision was made with Shimon that they were going to divide up Ruvain's estate 50-50, that cannot be reversed. So you can't say, look, if I'm Ruvain's son, so then I can get back the other things. Like, no, we don't go back and kind of renegotiate like that. Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar Hadar Dina, whereas Rabbi Yirmiyah says you can renegotiate the situation and figure out a way for this child to be able to inherit with the rest of Shimon's children. Let's say at the machlokas between Reb Abba, who says Kom Dina, and Reb Yirmiyah, who says Hadar Dina, let's say that they are arguing about the machlokas between, the same machlokas as Admon and the Rabbanon, Ditnan. You have a fellow, the fellow's name is Reuven. Reuven goes on a trip. He's traveling. And now Reuven had this interesting situation where he had a field. Now all around his field was surrounded by Shimon's field. And the only way for Reuven to be able to get to his field was to walk through Shimon's field. Now while Reuven was away, the path to his field got lost. He forgot where it is. Whatever it is, he doesn't know how to get to his field anymore because the path that he would generally take is now unavailable to him. So Admon says, look, just find the shortest path through Shimon's fields that surround his field and just go through the shortest path. Whereas the Chacham say, no, you can't just do that. Either buy, pay for a new path, pay Shimon for a new path. Oh, Yifrach Ba'avi, or use a hot air balloon. But you can't just, chop part of Shimon's land to use that as your path, even if it's the smallest amount. And we ask, L'Rabbanon, Shaper Kamar Admon. We're saying, wait, I don't understand. Why do the rabbis say that you have to use a hot air balloon, that you can't make a path? Doesn't Admon have a good point? Admon is saying, look, until now, there was a path that was objectively going through Shimon's field in order to get to Reuven's field, and that was okay. Like, he's not coming up and creating something new and saying, from now on, I want to walk through your path. The point is, there was a path initially. He went on a trip, somehow it got lost, that path, and now he just wants to recreate it. And Admon is suggesting, okay, well, we know that you already had a path going through Shimon's field to get to your field, so just find a straight line, find the shortest distance, and just use that. Doesn't that make sense? It says of Yehuda Amarav, actually, so it says, Rav Yehuda in the name Rav, actually, it's not like we've been assuming. It's not that Reuven's field is in the middle of Shimon's fields, and everything belongs to Shimon, and therefore, I can understand the argument of well, I was going through Shimon's paths anyways, let me just find the smallest path, right? But no, actually Reuven's field was surrounded by 4 different people's fields. And therefore, if he goes to, let's say it was surrounded by Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and Yisachar's field. So he goes to Shimon, he says, let me make a path through your field. He says, what do you mean? Your path wasn't through mine. He goes to Levi, he says, let me make it through yours. He says, what do you mean? Your path wasn't going through my field before. So, it was surrounded by 4 different people, and therefore each person, just kind of says well, go to the next person. Well, if that's the case, then I no longer understand Admon's opinion, who says, well, just find the shortest path. You can't just find the shortest path. Let's say the shortest path is through Shimon's field. But Shimon says, yeah, but your path was never on my field. It was on Levi's field. So you can't just decide that, let me find the shortest path and use that. If the path was never on If that was not the initial path, then you can't just assume that it was. So V'amar Rava, it says Rava, Be'arba de'asu mikoach arba. Well, if you have a situation where you have basically 4 different fields that were purchased from, right, and they all purchased it from 4 different people, or you have 4 different purchasers who bought it from one initial seller. Look, it's clear that if there are basically 4 owners, each one can say, look, don't look at me, go to the next guy. Rather, where the machlokas between Admon and the Chachamim is when it comes that Ruvain's field is in the middle of Shimon's fields. Right? It is entirely surrounded by Shimon's fields. However, Shimon bought those fields from 4 different people, and therefore Admon Savar Matzi Omerle Mikol Makom Darki Gabachu. So Admon says, look, at the end of the day, Reuven's field is entirely surrounded by Shimon's fields. And therefore, Reuven can make the argument to Shimon like, look, there was a path. The path was objectively going somewhere through what's now your fields. And just let me make the shortest path, and let's just do that. I'm not saying anything crazy. There was a path here before. Let me find the smallest place. It's definitely going through your field because you own all the fields. Let's just do that. Whereas the rabbis hold the Omerle that Shimon could respond to Reuven, shatakta, look, let's make a deal. I'm not giving you anything for free. I'll give you a good price, but that's about all that's as far as I'm gonna go. V'ilo, and if you're not willing to work with me on my terms, well, then I'm just going to reverse the sale, give everybody back their fields, and you're going to be stuck because each person is then going to say, not my problem, go to the next person. So basically, we have a situation where Admon is saying you can negotiate with Shimon, and the Chacham are saying, no, you can't, there's really nothing to negotiate because he could just kind of say, if you're not willing to accept my terms, I'm just going to give back the fields and you're going to be stuck. So we want to say that, so let's go weiter. So let's say Rabbi Abba who says, Kam Dina, that there's no negotiation, that whatever the situation is, that's the situation. So he's like the rabbis, he's like the rabbis who said that Shimon could say to Reuven, take it or leave it. Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Yirmiyah, who says, Hadar Dina, that you can renegotiate, so he holds like Admon, who says, that Reuven could rationalize with Shimon to say that he should be able to make a straight path. Amalach Rabbi Abba, but Rabbi Abba, who says Kam Dina, that there's no negotiation, Ana Da'amri Afilu Ka'admon, he could say, look, I can even go like Admon, Adkan Lo Kamar Admon Hosam, because after all, Admon only says, in this case with the fields, Ela Mishum Da'amalei B'manavshach Darki Chad Gabachu, because Reuven could argue to Shimon and say, look, at the end of the day, my path was definitely going through what's now your field. Aval Hacha, but over here, by this child who's a suffix, right? He doesn't really know if he's Reuven's child or Shimon's child. Mi'ika l'meimar hachi, are you able to say with such conviction, like I'm Reuven's child or I'm Shimon's child? Like, in the same level that by the fields you can say like, well, my path was definitely going through your field. No, this child doesn't really know who his father is. Rabbi Yirmiyah Amalach, and Rabbi Yirmiyah who says Hadar Dina, that you can renegotiate, I could say even like the rabbis who say that by the fields, Shimon could say there's no negotiation, either take my offer or leave it. Only because Shimon has the leverage. Right? Shimon has the leverage to say, look, take my terms, or otherwise I'm going to dissolve the sale, and good luck trying to convince everybody to let you make your path. Right? You won't be able to negotiate, right? You'll be stuck because everyone's going to push you off to the next guy. But over here, there isn't particular leverage over here. Nobody's got stronger kind of arguments. It's just Suffolk, Reuven, and Shimon. We don't really know what the deal is. So that's Daf Lam Zayin of Masechta Yevamos. So today's Daf started talking about a situation where Sarah gives birth, but the child passes away in less than 30 days. We saw machlokas between Reb Shimon Gamliel and the Chacham. Reb Shimon Gamliel says that a child needs to live for 30 days in order to be considered like a child that was born, whereas less than 30 days is a suffix. Whereas the rabbis say even less than 30 days is a vade child, and therefore the nafkamina is that if she got married, if this child passed away within 30 days, if she got married to somebody else, you can argue that really she should do chalitza just in case. You need to do yibum. But if she got married in the meantime to a Kohen, you would not need to do chalitza, since you could rely upon the fact that the child was a child and that Reuven had progeny. We then saw a brisa that so this child that is born between Shimon and Sarah, and we don't know if it's Reuven's child or Shimon's child, the child is definitely a kosher child, right? Either from Reuven or from Shimon, that's fine. But if Shimon and Sarah stay together, well, then the second child becomes a suffix mamzer. And we saw machlokas between Abaye and Rava about what Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion is. And of course, what we care about is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion, because Mishnah Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Kav V'Noki, as Rashi points out, that we always pass like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. And therefore, Abaye says that what Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion is that we treat this second child as a vade mamzer, and he can marry a mamzeris. According to Rava, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion is that we treat this child as a suffix mamzer, and he cannot marry a mamzeris. And then we saw different contexts in which the suffix status of this child, being from either Reuven or from Shimon, has nafkaminas in terms of how exactly he can inherit his father, how he can inherit Shimon when Shimon dies with the brothers, and having to prove that he's really either Reuven's child or Shimon's child. Friends, that was Daf Lamed Zayin of Masechet Yevamos. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.